Even though the slide is in Thai, but we will present this class in English. So let's start. มหาพิวาทะพุทธวจ
พุทธ
นะ
ว
จ
จนะจ
ตุราสี
ตุราสีติ
มหั
ธรรม
ทะสหัสสานิวิสติอริยมรรคะวิสติสามัญ
สามัญญภระ
เอ
เอก
ะ
ะ
นิพ
นิ
พา
พพา
นะ
นะขิปา
ปา
พิญ
พิญ
ญา
ญาโดย
โด
เฉีย
ย
บ
เฉียบพลันในประวัติการนี้เถิด
โย
โย
โว
โวอานัน
ถ้า
ทา
ไม่
ม
ธัมโม
ธัมโม
จะ วิ
จะ
นัย
วิ
โย
นัยโย
จะ
จะเท
เท
สิ
สิ
โต
โตปัญญาโต
ยัตโตโสโวมามาจะ
จะ
เย
เย
นะ
นะ
สั
สั
ท
ท
ธา
ธาโย
โยโวอานัน
ถ้า
ทา
ไม่
มยา
ธัมโม
ธัมโมจะวินัยโย
จะเทสิโตปัญญา
ยั
โต
ตโตโส
มา
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 จะ
จะ
เยนะสัท
นะ
ธา
สัทธาโยโวอานันทามายาธัมโม
จะ
จะ
วิ
วิ
นั
นั
ย
ย
โย
โย
จะเท
จะเทสิโต
ปั
ปั
ญ
ญ
ญา
ญา
โต
โต
โส
โส
โว
โว
มา
มามา
มา
จะ
จะ
เย
เย
นะ
นะ
สัท
สัทธา
ธาพุทธวจนะจ
จ
ตุ
ตุ
รา
รา
สี
สี
ติ
ติธรรมขัน
ธรรม
ธะ
ขันธสหัสสานี้
คื
คือ อ
ป
ป
ร
ร
มั
มั
ต
ต
ถ
ถ
อนุตตร
อ
สั
นุ
ม
ตตร
มา
สัมมาสัมโพธิส
สั
ม
ม
ณะ
โพ
โคตม
สัม
ปั
มา
ญ
ปัญ
ญา
ญา
ธิ
ธิ
กะ
กะ
นะโม
นะโมตัส
ตัส
สะ
สะภะ
ภะ
คะ
คะ
วะ
วะ
โต
โตอะระ
อะ
หะโต
ระหะโตสัมมาสัม
สัม
พุท
พุท
ธัส
ธัส
สะ
สะม
ม
หา
หา
ภิ
ภิ
วาว
า
ทะ
ทะ ป
ป
ร
ร
มัต
มั
ถ
ตถ
อ
อ
นุต
นุ
ต
ต
ร
ร
สัม
สัม
มา
มา
สัม
สั
โพ
มโพ
ธิ
ธิ
ปัญญาธิ
ญาธิ
กะ
กะ ทรง
ทรง
บำ
บำเพ็ญมหาปารมี 20 อสังไขยะกำไรแสนกัปปะ
ทรงพบป
ท
ร
รงพบปรมัตถอนุตตรสัม
สัม
มา
มา
สัม
สัม
โพ
โพ
ธิ
ธิ
512,028 ปัญญาธิ
ญาก
ะ
ธิ
พุ
กะ
ทธะด้วยเสียงเก้า นะโม
นะโม
ตั
ตั
ส
ส
สะ
สะ
ภะคะวะ
ภะ
โต
คะวะโต
อะ
อะ
ระ
ระ
หะ
หะ
โต
โต สัม
สัม
มา
มาสัม
สัม
พุท
พุท
ธัส
ธัส
สะ
สะ
ม
ม
หา
หา
ภิ
ภิ
วาว
า
ทะ
ทะ ป
ป
ร
ร
มั
มั
ต
ต
ถ
ถ
อ
อ
นุ
นุ
ต
ต
ต
ต
ร
ร
สั
สั
ม
ม
มา
มา
สัมโพ
สัมโพ
ธิ
ธิสัทธา
ญา
ธิ
ธิ
กะ
กะ ทรง
ทรง
บำเพ็ญ
บำเพ็ญ
ม
ม
หา
หา
บา
ปาร ร
มี
มี
40 อ
40
สั
อง
ไข
สัง
ยะ
ไข
กำไร
ยะกำ
กั
ไร
ป
แสนกัปปะ
ทรงพบ
ทร
ป
ง
ร
พบ
มัตถ
ปร
อนุ
มั
ต
ต
ต
ถ
ร สั
อ
ม
นุตต
มาร
สั
สัม
ม
โพ
มา
ธิ
สัมโพธิ
1,44,055 สัทธาธิกะ พุทธะ
1,55,055
ด้วย
ธิ
เสี
กะ
ยง
พุท
เก
ธะ
ล้า
ด้วยเสียงเก้า นะโมตัส
ตั
สะ
ส สะ ภะคะวะโต อะระ
อะ
หะ
ระ
โต
หะโต
สัมมา
สัม
สั
มาม
พุท
สัม
ธัส
พุท
สะ
ธัสสะมหาม ภิ
หาว
า
ภิ
ทะ
วาทะ ปรมัต
ป
ถ
ร
อ
มัต
นุต
ถ
ตร
อนุ
สัม
ตต
มา
ร
สัม
สัม
โพ
มา
ธิ
สัมโพ
วิ
ธิ
ริยา
วิ
ธิ
ริ
กะ
ยาธิกะ
ทรงบำ
ทร
เพ็
ง
ญ ม
บำ
หา
เพ็ญ
บาม ร
หา
มี
ปารมี 80 อสังไขยะกำไรแสนกัป
กัป
ปะ
ปะ ทรงพบ
ทร
ป
ง
ร
พบ
มัตถ อ
ป
นุ
ร
ต
มัต
ตร
ถ
สั
อ
ม
นุต
มา
ตร
สัม
สัม
โพ
มา
ธิ
สัมโพธิ
2,48,109 วิริยา
2,48,109
ธิ
วิ
กะ
ริยาธิ
พุ
กะ
ท
พุท
ธะ
ธะ
ด้วย
ด้
เสี
วย
ง
เสี
เก
ย
ล้า
งเก้า
สาธุทุกท่านนะครับ
everybody
For everyone ครับ
ค่ะ น
ค
มั
รับ
สการอเยทู
น
นะ
น
น
มั
มั
ส
ส
กา
การ ร
ไอ
อเย
เย
สติ
น
อ
มั
ริ
ส
ยมรรค
นมัส
นมัส
การ
การ
อ
ไอ
เย
เย
วีสติสามัญญภระ
นมัส
นมั
กา
ส
ริ
การอเย
เอกะนิพพานะขิปปาพิญญาโดยเฉียบพลันในประวัติการนี้เทิน
สา
สา
ธุ
ธุ
สา
สาธุ
ธุ
สา
สา
ธุ
ธุ นาวุ
นาวุ
ติ
ติ
ป
อุ
ริ
ป
พั
นิ
น
ธิ
ธะ
พันธะอนุโมทามิ today emergency teaching เนอะ
It's okay.
okay so
Anytime we ready, right?
we have to ready all the time in order to see like Asoka people Aye no Asoka Aye have to ready all the time in order for everyone to Sikkha Dhamma no
Nice.
okay
So today is the 9th Savanamasassa Mahabuddhajayanti 2615 or August 22nd Buddhist era 2569. And before we begin the class, as always, we need to mention about the important note that Dhamma provided in this presentation is simple and not Kampira or profound. People must continuously study Dhamma or else it will lead to Mahatapa, Nirya, or hell because it is Mitchatitti or not following the Buddha's teaching. If any provided content contrasts with Dhamma 84,000 Dhammakantaka, please refer to Dhamma 84,000 Dhammakantaka only. Okay. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the class, Yovo Anantamaya Dhammo ja Vinayo ja Tesito Panyato Sovo Mamachayena Sattha, or translate into English that Dhamma Puttavachana 84,000 Dhammakantaka is Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. That's why we need to Sikkha, and we need to we are not Sikkha in order to translate it, but we need to Sikkha in order to understand according to what Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said to us in Paramattha Dhamma level, not the translation one. That's why it's quite different from others. Okay. And And when we Sikkha, Dhamma is quite difficult and very profound. That's why we need to Sikkha. We developed our understanding gradually. We are not cannot jump into to deep understanding right away. That's why we need to progress very gentle, understand a little bit in profoundness every time that we Sikkha. That's why we need to continuously Sikkha until we reach Sikkha and Asekha eventually.
And this is mean that when you Sikkha at the first time we teach it, this not mean that is 100% that is direct, because sometimes we have to give you some knowledge in order to make you be happy enough in order to receive a little bit Dhamma, then gatherings higher level. No, we don't give you at the first time because maybe you not cannot receive that directly at the first time. So we gatherings tell you, no. Okay. Satu.
As we one of the four Putra Parisa during each of the as Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said that to maintain Puddha Sasana, we need to have four Puddha Parisa, and each of Puddha Parisa also have the responsibilities, and these are the responsibility of the four Puddha Parisa. The first one is the four Puddha Parisa must well understand the Tipitaka 84,000 Dhammakantaka. The second one is the four Puddha Parisa must be able to correctly present 84,000 Dhammakantaka. And the last one is the four Puddha Parisa must be able to correct those who condemn or misunderstand the Tipitaka 84,000 Dhammakantaka.
Okay, please pay respect to our Tipitaka Dhammacariya Dhammapara Theravada Phara Pothi Suchata on ท่านอังคคุณะอริยธรรมวัตตพิรตะโสตาปันนะ and ท่านพัชรโพธิวัตตพิรตะโสตาปันนะสุปฏิปันโนสุปฏิปันโนสุปฏิปันโนสาธุสาธุสาธุนาวุติอุปาณิธิพันธะอนุโมทามิ Okay, น้องกัน before we start for the Sikkha, we are not in this class, not in sit on here and study like normal na. We draw you back into the past life, no. So you did not think that we are study, but we Sikkha. Sikkha is not the same. So we draw you back to our past life. If you study, it means that you will not get to Nivarana and cannot get at all. That means that when you meditation, when you make meditation, that is the new thing, not Paramattha Puttha Vachana. That was not Paramattha teaching. And then meditation is only for the present, no? When you close your eye and sit still, it means that you do now, only now. You cannot sit still last day, last month, yesterday or something. But when you Sikkha, you have to prepare yourself in order to draw you back in your past life. Okay ค่ะ สาธุ
สาธุครับ That is a good point, Piping. Because when we said about Sikkha, and as we explained at the beginning of the class, that first of all, when we start to understand the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, it's quite inevitable that we start with the translation one. However, we recommend that by starting from translation, as same as us in Thai, we translate Makatha language into Thai. However, when we Sikkha into details, we need to translate back what we translate into Thai back into Makatha language. And from that point, we try to understand the meaning of that word according to the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi without translation. That is the approach that we are using when we Sikkha. That's why our approach is quite different from others. You see, when most of the people, when they study Dhamma, they remains in the translation, and then they use their experience or their knowledge or their perception, and then they try to explain more in detail after they translate into their own language by using their own knowledge. That is normal approach that most of the people are using. However, in our group, our approach is from the starting point, it quite like the same. We starting to explain the new people. Sometimes we use translation. However, once you're familiar with the words or the vocab, then we remove the translation and we replace them with the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. For example, like hate, loathe, greedy, things like this. We can start from Lopa, translate into English as greed. Tosa, translate into English as angry. Moha, translate into English as unknown. Know nothing, like that, for example. Then we go back. When we start to Sikkha, we go back. We are removing those translation and replace them with the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, which starting from the components that related to that vocab or that Dhamma. As an example that we have shown you, we removed all translation and replaced them. When we mention about Lopa, we means Lopa Mulajitta, 8. And Tosa. In Tosa, we remove the translation and explain them as Tosa Mulajitta 2. And also the last one, the sample Moha, we remove the translation and we replace them with Moha Mulajitta 2. By doing so, when we replace the translation with what Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said as a component, as for example, like Lopa Mulajitta 8, The first one is Somanassa Sahakatang Titi Kata Sampayutang Asankharikan Kama Vajra Akusala Lopamulicittang. Like this. Without translation, each of the words contain the characteristics and behavior of this citta. It also mentioned that how many cetasika that are going to work with them. Altogether, we have cetasika 52. And all cetasika 52 try to work with each of citta. They start from the first one, and the second one, third one, until they reach 121. However, when those cetasika try to work with the first citta, which we have just mentioned, which the first citta is lopa mula citta. So manasa sakatan titi kata sampayutang asankharikan kama vajra akusala lopa mula citta. This citta, all of 52 cetasika, only 19 out of 52 cetasika that can work with citta, this citta. And the second one is also lopa mula citta, and there are only 21 cetasika that can work with these citta, apart from all 52 cetasika, and on, things like this. You see, our approach, once we remove the translation and replace them with the components and the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, is starting to show the component, the activities, how they work, how they act together, and how they be the base or be the cause that make the results in our body, our environment, or on the earth, on the in the solar system, and many universes. These are the results of those citta, cetasika, and rupa without translation. That's why when we remove those translation and replace them with the components that Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said, we can explain the existence of not only human, not only animal, not only this earth, not only the environment that we are staying in, not only the existence of the solar system, not only the existence of universes, the spaces, but also the existence of 31 Bhumi by the explanation of the when we remove the translation and we are following the Buddha's teaching will explain everything. The cause that cause from citta 121 cetasika 52 rupa 28, and the result of those cause are ourselves as Manusa Bhumi, and not only in Manusa Bhumi but also 31 Bhumi, starting from Abhaya Bhumi 4, Naraka, Peta, Asurakaya, Tirachana, and then Manusa Bhumi 1, Teva Bhumi 6, Brahma Bhumi 16, and Arupa Brahma Bhumi 4. However, all of 31 Bhumi, without the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, or without the enlightenment of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, with only sattva, without the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, no matter where you are in this 31 Bhumi, once you pass away, or once you juti from those Bhumi, the only place that you can go are Abhaya Bhumi 4. Because in order to go to go to Manusa Bhumi 1, Teva Bhumi 6, Brahma Bhumi 16, Arupa Brahma Bhumi 4, you need to listen to the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. However, with the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, when we Sikkha or when we study, we are not Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi didn't aim for us to remain in 31 Bhumi, because you can see there is certain, if you cannot find the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, as we mentioned that no matter where you are, only one destination that you will go is Abhaya Bhumi 4. So there is not a risk, but there is certain, if you remain in the cycle of existence, eventually you will end up in Abhaya Bhumi 4. Therefore, once Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightened, with the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi or Dhamma Tesana 84,000 Dhammakantaka, when you Sikkha, when you listen to the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, the ultimate goal is to not remain in the cycle of existence, not remain in none of 31 Bhumi. You need to leave from these 31 Bhumi. And with the explanation, with the Tesana of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi also mentioned that by remaining in 31 Bhumi, when you remain in 31 Bhumi, all the creation of the 31 Bhumi remains under the influence of avijja. Avijja, once we translate it into English, we translate it as unknown or something like that. However, when Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi explained about avijja and we removed the translation aside, instead of translate avijja as unknown or not knowing things, we remove translation out. And then what caused avijja? Avijja comes from moha cetasika. And once moha cetasika cause avijja, avijja make 31 bhumi happen. You see, avijja is not create only abhaya bhumi 4, but avijja also create manusa bhumi 1, teva bhumi 6, brahma bhumi 16, arupa brahma bhumi 4. It cover the whole 31 bhumi. 31 bhumi remains under influence the creation of avijja. And by remaining in these kind of things under avijja, under control of avijja, that's why we remain in the cycle of existence. However, when Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi enlightened, the opposite of avijja is vicca. Vicca need Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi to enlighten and tell us the way to leave from the influence of avijja or moha cetasika. And what Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said and explained to us, that cover 84,000 Dhammakantaka, that is vicca, that can lead us to leave 31 bhumi out of the influence, out of the creation of avijja, if we follow the Buddha's teaching. If we are not following the Buddha's teaching, as we mentioned, all of our body and our environment, not only our body and also our environment, those creation remains in the influence of avijja. You see, the reason that why everything remains under influence of avijja is because avijja is moha cetasika. And moha cetasika can work with citta 121. Even though you see, avijja moha cetasika is akusala cetasika, it works with akusala citta 12. However, they also work with the creation of manusa bhumi, teva bhumi 6, brahma bhumi 16, and arupa brahma bhumi 4 too, because when you can stop avijja or moha cetasika only if you reach arahata phala. Otherwise, these moha cetasika remain active. That's why even you reach sotapadimmakha, sakatthakami sotapanna, sakatthakami, anakami, you still remains in the bhumi that created by avijja. But however, in that condition, the work of avijja is quite different from us. Avijja, in our case, it keeps us in the cycle of existence. And without finding the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, we definitely go to Abhaya Bhumi 4. However, for Suttawasa 5 Bhumi, in those 5 Bhumi, there are the Bhumi for Anakhami Pukkala. In that case, avijja or moha create this bhumi for anakami to bahana and enter nirvana eventually. So it's different from us because if we cannot reach sotapanna and we cannot find the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, in that case, we definitely go to Abhaya Bhumi 4. That's why it's very risky for us to remain in the cycle of existence. That's why once we find the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, and then we put our extreme or the best effort in order to follow the Buddha's teaching to leave the cycle of existence according to the Buddha's teaching has already explained. We cannot think by ourselves. Because even our mind still in the influence or under control of avijja. That's why once our mind under control of avijja, we cannot think by ourselves to leave the influence of avijja. That's why we cannot leave the cycle of existence by ourselves.
You mean that we cannot think by ourselves in order to get nivarana? That is mean that we cannot close our eye and make meditation or vipassana by ourselves, right?
Right. Because this one is very, very important, as we've been mentioned. Once we remove the translation, avijja is not the unknown or not knowing things. But once avijja is moha cetasika, and those moha cetasika work with citta, all of citta and all of rupa that create us, including our mind. That's why with all of our part that we have, none of the part or even our mind are out of the control of avijja. So altogether, if in every part of us are under control of avijja, that's why we cannot leave avijja or leave the cyclic existence by ourselves. We cannot think by ourselves because our things is also under influence of avijja. None of us can escape avijja. So that's why, and not only us, but none of Sattva in 31 Bhumi are able to leave avijja except Suttawasa 5. That is special case because even though they are still in avijja, but in different story from us, they'll reach Arahatapala and enter nirvana. However, as we are different from those exceptions. So that's why you see there are none of our part that out of the control of avijja. That's why we need to find the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. As we mentioned at the beginning of the class, that as Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said, Yovo anantamaya dhammo ca viniyo ca tesito panyato sovo mamacayena sattha. At this moment, Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi has already entered nirvana, and the representative of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi at this moment is Dhamma 84,000 Dhammakantaka. That's why we need to find Dhamma 84,000 Dhammakantaka, because this is the only way and the only path that show us the way to leave influence of avijja by following the Buddha's teaching. Because with avijja and Anuttara Samma Sambodhi teaching is vicca. Vicca is the 84,000 Dhammakandaka and showing the way to end the cycle of existence. That's why we need to find vicca or find the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambodhi. And in order to find the real teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambodhi, we need to remove the translation and we go back to Sikkha or try to understand each of the components. For example, in details, avijja, as we mentioned, under it caused by moha cetasika. Avijja itself divided into three groups because avijja creates 31 bhumi, and those 31 bhumi grouped into three groups. The first one is punyabhisankhan. Punyabhisankhan create abhaya bhumi 4. Abhaya bhumi 4 are under this category which called punyabhisankhan. And the second one, punyabhisankhan. There are three groups of bhumi under punyabhisankhan. The first one is manusa bhumi 1. The second group is teva bhumi 6, and the third group is brahma bhumi 16. And the final one, the third group under avijja, we call it nenchaphisankhan or arupa brahma bhumi 4. Altogether, you see, altogether, punyabhisankhan, and nenchaphisankhan, they cover all 31 bhumi under the name of avijja.
You mean that all 31 bhumi still have avijja, right?
Right.
Not only human.
Not only human. Manusa bhumi.
So avijja is cannot translate as not knowing thing.
Right. And cannot translate as the bad one also. Because you see, from what we call avijja, if you translate, it's not knowing things, right? But by translation, not knowing things, it sounds like it's not a good one. It should be a bad one, right? If you know
bad tone, yes.
It should be the bad one. But look carefully. Once we remove the translation, avijja caused by moha cetasika, and under avijja create 31 bhumi. They also create the good one and the bad one, right? Abhaya bhumi 4, those are the place we don't want to go. But avijja not only create a bad one, it also create a good one. The one that we prefer to be if we cannot leave from the cyclic of existence. You see, avijja also create manusa bhumi 1, teva bhumi 6, brahma bhumi 16, arupa brahma bhumi 4. Right. So you cannot translate it. Once you translate it by avijja as unknown or not knowing things, it sounds bad, right? You need to know something.
Yes.
With that translation, you know nothing about these. The creation of 31 bhumi by avijja. But once we remove the translation and follow the Buddha's teaching, Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said that avijja caused by moha cetasika. And moha cetasika, once it caused avijja, then avijja create 31 bhumi. See, by explaining like this, you see that that's why avijja can create all 31 bhumi, because those 31 bhumi remains in the influence of moha cetasika, because moha cetasika work with citta 121. For it obviously working with akusala citta. However, in kusala part and in jhana part and in lokuttara part, it remains in all of it resides itself in Sopanasatthana Jesik 19. I need to check it again, but um, I think it's so Sopana Saturna Cetasika 19. There is a representative in there, those Cetasika. And those Cetasika work with all Kusala, Kusala Chitta, Rupa Chitta, Arupa Chitta, and also Lokuttara Chitta. That's why it's quite important topic of Dhamma. So from these words, from the word punyapi sankhan, anenchapi sankhan, there is a word also pi. Those P are the abbreviation of Abhidhamma. Abhidhamma, as we explained last time, that by to have kusala or akusala to go to your next, create your next life, or to leave the cyclic existence, to enter Sotapadimaka, you need to enter Paramattha Dhamma under Abhidhamma. That's why in each of the words there is a hidden part. P is the abbreviation of Abhidhamma. And Sankhara, or the other name is Chati. So that's why you remain in the cycle of existence. But there is a special one, Punya. Punya or Punya Kriyavattu. Or Punya Kriyavattu remains, show them in two parts. The first part of Punya Kriyavattu remains in Suttanta, and the second part remains in Abhidhamma. That's why we always explain that Punya Kriyavattu is the connection between Suttanta and Abhidhamma. That's why when we call ourselves Sikkha, we stay in Punya Kriyavattu. We're starting from Punya Kriyavattu 10, and then Punya Kriyavattu become 11. From one Sila divided into two become Kayakama Sila and Vajikam Sila. Therefore, it turned into 11, and then it turned into 23, and eventually it reached the level, Paramattha Dhamma level, reach Abhidhamma level. Once they reach Abhidhamma level, it turns themselves from Than, Seen, Bhavana, Apajayana, Vaya, Vaja, Patithan, Patanumotana, Dhamma, Savana, Dhamma, Tesana, Titushukha into Cetasika and Citta. And the base and the main component of Citta that perform Punya Kriyavattu are Mahakusala Citta 8. And only when you reach Paramattha Dhamma under Abhidhamma, that's where Mahakusala Citta 8 stays. So you cannot have Mahakusala Citta 8 working in Suttanta level. Therefore, but in Suttanta level, you can perform Punya Kriyavattu 10 times.
Okay, for this point, you will see that for the Punkriya Vattu 10, it is all nice, it is Manokama. Only one that Sila is Kayakama and Vajikama. And then this is the hint that someone tell that we will not do anything. We only want to Sikkha one thing only. We don't want to work. We don't want to clean the place. We don't want to sweep or to clean, to plant anything in the temples. We want to only Sikkha. That is good or not?
This is a good question, Piping.
Yeah.
When we need to Sikkha, when we need to perform Sikkha, one moment. What happened with my slide? Okay. When we talking about Sila consisting of Kaya Kamma and Vaji Kamma. That's why when we are entering Sila, we need to follow the Buddha's teaching, right? When Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi or Buddha's teaching, we need to use our Kaya Kamma and Vaci Kamma according to the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. For example, like Bhikkhuni. Bhikkhuni, when you want to be Bhikkhuni, you cannot choose clothes by yourself. You cannot wear trousers. You cannot wear a dress. You cannot wear a t-shirt. You cannot wear a skirt. You cannot wear a sneaker. Why is that? Because you need to comply with what Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said. Am I correct? That's why you need to go back to refer to what Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said about being Bhikkhuni. What is the proper cloth for Bhikkhuni? That's why we need to bring back all 5 pieces of clothes, and not only 5 pieces of clothes, but how we make it, how each of those pieces are made.
จีวรัง
Yes, we need to follow the Buddha's teaching, and not only number of pieces, not only how of each pieces are made, but also the name we call them, right? This is where you get your clothes as Bhikkhuni. You see, by doing so, they are not appear from nowhere. You need to use your body and your vati, or what you do think that you can speak. You can ask people to buy their clothes. You carry them from the shop back to Vivata. You cut those clothes, you sew them together, you're dyeing them by using your kaya and vaci, and also hidden by mano. In order to do that, you are following the Buddha's teaching. By doing so, you are doing sila according to Buddhagaya Vatu. See, this is how you enter sila as the simplified version by doing it like this. This is, for example, like how to make a proper clothes for Bhikkhuni. Once you are Bhikkhuni, you are required to follow the activities of Bhikkhuni that Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said during Buddha's era in order to get punya. You need to follow what Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi said. By using your kaya and vaci, then you enter sila. Again, once you wear clothes, Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi also said that you need to pintapata in the morning, right? Also, period of time, the activities. You cannot do it pintapata anytime you want. But there are specific time for you to be able to pintapata according to the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. And
วิ
one
นัยะ
yes, according to Vinaya. And not only that, one more example. You also have a certain time that you can eat. You cannot eat all day, all night, same as us. But you have special rules and regulations according to the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. According to Vinaya, you are able to eat during the special period of time. By doing so, you are entering sila. And by entering sila, by using your body and your words,
verbal
your verbal like this, it is starting point to enter Buddhagaya Vatu 10. Because when you're using your body and your verbal, they are not, these two parts cannot run independently without your mind or manokam. However, when you perform sila correctly, it means that you perform you use your body and your verbal correctly. The things that control your body and your verbal correctly comes from manokamma. And in Bunyagravatu, once you perform correct sila, then you received manokamma, the correct manokamma, and it consisting of Than, Pavana, Apachayana, Vaya, Vacha, Patitan, Patanumotana, Dhamma, Savana, Dhamma, Tesana, and Titushukam, or we call manogam 3. Altogether, they are manogam 3. And Kaya Kamma 4, Kaya Kamma 3, Vajikamma 4, and Manokamma 3. Kaya Kamma 3, Pana Atina Kame. Vajikamma 4, Musa, Pisuna Vata, Purusa Vata, Sampapalapa. And Manokamma 3 for Kusala 1. There are Apicca, Piyapata, Micca, Titti. And for Kusala 1, there are Amapicca, Apiyapata, Samma, Titti. That's why when it reached Bunyagravatu 23, Manokamma turns into Anapicca, Piyapata, Samma, Titti. Anapicca or Alopa Chetasic, Piyapata or Atosa Chetasic, and Samma Titti or Panya Chetasic.
น้องกัน
Yes.
น้องกัน what you teachings I still wonder because if I becomes Bhikkhuni I already pintapata like you said I already savings jivarangs like you said but I don't want I sikkaya but I don't want to work at all because I am Bhikkhuni I want to only do Bhikkhuni work only. I don't want to clean the place, clean temple. I don't want to plant because why? I come here in the temple in order to be Bhikkhuni. I want only kusala thing only, you know?
Right. That is the correct one.
So I have no need to clean the temple. I have no need to clean the place. The place that we have already take the food out. So let other one clean for us, right? Is it
That's very good
for
point.
me?
That is
to do
very
that?
good. By if we think by ourselves
Yes,
without
think that.
reverting to the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi,
Yep.
we can use our money to hire people to help us. And
We can have Upasaka and Upasika.
right,
They have to help because I ordained.
right. That is a very good point. But you
Yes.
see, from these Bunyagravatu 10, the only way to enter Bunyagravatu 10 starting
Yes.
from Sila. Sila consists of Kaya Kamma and Vaci Kamma, your Kaya and Vaci. The more you perform, the more you gain Bunyagravatu. However, only condition that you need to comply with the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi or Vinaya. Otherwise, you will receive a Bunyagravatu instead of Bunyagravatu. However, if we have already understand that we need to comply with the Vinaya or the teaching of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, the more you perform by using your Kaya and Vajiya, the more Sila you gain, the more Bunyagravatu you gain, the more progress of Sikkaya you gain. This point is quite different. That's why we insist that we need to remove the translation. If you translate Sikkaya as study, you keep the translation like that. You use your past experience related toward study. You try to think that by Sikkaya translate into English as study, and you also have experience with study from
Yes.
until adults. The performance of study, you need to open the book, you need to sit, you need to recite, you need to perform the test, You need to listen and you do nothing. Apart from reading a lot, listening a lot, short note and have a taste.
This
And pass the
exam.
exam. Yes.
Yes.
And pass exam. That's why we recommend that. That's why we need to remove the translation. Sikkha is not equal study. When we remove study out of Sikkha, then what is Sikkha? Sikkha, you gain Sikkha only if you perform Bunyakariya because Sikkha stays in Bunyakariya. Once you perform Bunyakariya, eventually you reach Sikkha and Sikkha and Asikha. And the only way to enter Bunyakariya is Sila. That's why the more you're using your Kaya and the more you're using your Vaji, you gain Sila. The more Sila you gain. The more Sila you gain, the more Bunyakariya you gain. And the more progress of Sikkha you receive, then eventually you reach Sikkha and Asikha. That's why even though we have money, even if we have enough money, why we are not hiring people? Because when we Sikkha and Sikkha stays in Bunyakariya, and the only way to enter Bunyakariya is through Sila. And by enter Sila, you need to use your Kaya and Vaji or your body and things that you can work. That's why you need to work using your body to work according to Vinaya and according to the sample of Buddha Savaka in Buddha's era. And then you will progress with your Sikkha into Sekha and Asekha eventually.
If can I work at my home or work at office, why I have to work in the temple?
That is quite complicated and a very good question.
Mhm.
Let me say it this way. If you work for yourself,
Yes.
work for your home, the one who gain the benefit from those are the one or the people in your home only.
Yes.
If those people can recite Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, and they all Sikkha, and that would be you gain a little bit more of Punyakariya. However, is it better that you perform the same action or the same activities in the place of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi states? When we in Watta or Vivatta, those are places that we present them to Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. So therefore, those areas are the areas of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi. The more you perform your activities in those places have special multiplier. I would say that special multiplier because those area belongs to Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi and belongs to Buddha Savaka and belongs to the persons who are following the Buddha's teaching, try to follow the Vinaya of Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi, and everyone in those places can recite Citta, Cetasika, and Rupa, and also have other Dhamma within them. So with the same activities, with the same performance on these two different places, in Watta, Vivatta, with the same activities, you have special multiplier. That's why you can proceed with your Sikkha into Sekha and Asekha much faster than doing at your home. Because at your home, there's no multiplier, no special multiplier.
You mean that when we working for our for the Vatta and Vivatta, working in the proper way only, you can get Sila in Punya Kriya Wattu 10. but if you work for yourself, for your family, only for that, you cannot get punya kiriya wattu 10. You get punya, no? Right?
Well, we can get, but it's very little.
Mm-hmm.
Very little. There's no special multiplier, but there is a lot of certain conditions that most likely you gain very little from working there.
Almost none. Right?
Almost none, but better than none.
Yes.
Better than better than not doing things. But you will gain a little only if you can recite Citta, Cetasika, Rupa. Otherwise, definitely zero.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
With the same activity, without able to recite Citta, Cetasika, Rupa. However, we recommend that you need to be able to recite Citta, Cetasika, Rupa in order to, when you perform by using your body and your vocal anywhere, because you have Citta, Cetasika, Rupa within yourself, you gain Punya Kriya Vattu. No, however, the more the receiver and the more that you interact with, they have Dhamma within them. They have Citta, Cetasika, Rupa. The more they have, the more you gain with the same activities that you perform. That's why we recommend, if it's possible,
Okay.
doing the same activity within Vata Vivata, you gain more. However, I know that there are a lot of people who have certain conditions that they cannot go to Vata and Vivata every day.
Yeah.
However, by doing at your home, but first thing first, you need to be able to recite Citta 121, Cetasika 52, Rupa 20, and you can perform your daily activities. That's nothing prohibit. You can perform as you need to perform those activities, but we recommend that at least you need to be able to recite Citta 121, Cetasika 52, and Rupa 28. And don't worry if you cannot go to Vata and Vivata to perform the same activities. However, if you have a chance, if you have an opportunities, yes, that will be good opportunities for you. But if you don't have that kind of opportunities, or you have certain conditions that you cannot go there, don't worry. Sikkha, you can starting within your places or the where you live by performing according to what Anuttara Samma Sambuddhi mentioned, and starting from recite Citta 121, Cetasika 52, Rupa 28. That is the starting point that will help you to gain bunya.
Okay. In conclusion, if you become bhikkhuni, you have to be in the temples. You should be stay jamvasa or jamvat. It means that you stay in the temples, not go back to home again and again. And you have to work for in the Vinaya in order to get sila in Punya Kriya Vattu 10. That is, you can get chana in future. Right? Okay.
Right. Right. Are there any questions?
Any question from Asoka? Have or not? Aye Sankamita, do you have any question?
Okay, if there is no questions, that will be the end of the class. สาธุทุกท่านครับ
We pay respect to our Aye. อะไรนะ นมัสการ
นมัสการ Aye
มีสติอริยมรรค
นมัสการ Aye
มีสติสามัญญภาระ
นมัสการ Aye
เอกานิพพานะขิปปาปิญญาโดยเฉียบพลันในปฏิการนี้เถิด
ขิปปาปิญญาโดยเฉียบพลันในประวัติการนี้เถิด
สาธุ